Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Artist Talk about the exhibition at the Art Gallery of Algoma, Wrapped in Culture. It is our great pleasure to welcome you all today, and I would like to start off with the acknowledgement of the land. Art Gallery of Algoma and the artists would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Anishinaabe territory inhabited by them since time immemorial. In particular, we acknowledge that we are Robinson-Huron Treaty territory, and the land on which we have gathered today is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe. Following this acknowledgement, I would like also to say that this exhibition is toured and organized by the Ottawa Art Gallery, and we would like to extend our gratitude to them for allowing us to have this exhibition in the time of pandemic and delays with everything. So the exhibition was scheduled at a different time. However, as I said, we are grateful that we were able to present it to our audiences, and now to audiences from far, I guess, because at least some of the registered attendees are not from this area. I would now like to introduce our panelists today, and I will start with the artists. The lead artist for this project is Rosalie Favell, and Rosalie will be leading the conversation. And following Rosalie is Barry Ace, who is also participating artist. And Adrian Stimson, who is having difficulties, and I apologize for being late. Adrian is still not on our right screen.
He is here.
I am.
Okay, then welcome, Adrian. And also we have Christiana Burdage, who is our public engagement coordinator, and she's the co-host of this webinar with me. She will be monitoring a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so please type in your questions, and she will be directing your questions to the artists. And the last but not least, it's Sarah Cadberson, who is our curatorial assistant. I didn't introduce myself, I guess. So the welcome comes from the executive director of the Art Gallery of Algoma in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And my name is Jasmina, and I welcome you all to this virtual talk with the hope that we will have no glitches of any kind. We already experienced some, so I hope you're done with that.
Oh, that's great.
So my first question I will actually address to Rosalie, who is the lead artist, to start off by explaining to all of us how this project came about and how the whole exhibition developed. So Rosalie, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Jasmina, and thank you to you and all your staff for all the work you've done. It's been incredible to see the exhibition, virtually at least. I'm sorry that we're not able to be there in person. But yeah, so Wrapped in Culture, I keep taking you to Australia here, came about because I went on a artist residency with the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology and the University of Lethbridge residency program. And while I was there for 6 weeks. A friend, another Indigenous artist, hooked me up with Julie Tippin O'Toole in Melbourne. She said, "Oh, Julie, you can connect with her." And so I was wanting to do portraits of other Indigenous artists while I was there. So Julie took me around to a workshop that Marie Clark and Len were doing on making possum skin cloaks. And it was a reconciliation for a community in Melbourne. And they, it was just so welcoming and so wonderful. They were teaching cultural practices, both past and present. And we sat around working together, sort of like, it was a bit of a sewing bee for a while. We sewed together the possum skins, and then we worked on a design. And this was over a number of weekends. And then we came up with the design, and as you saw, we etched it in. Oops. So here we are sewing. And I was so, maybe because I tend to work in isolation as an artist on my own with my computer or my camera. It was just so welcoming to be surrounded by other people, other Indigenous artists, and the feeling that Marie and Lenny had created was so moving. While I was there, I said, I've got to find a way to bring you to Canada, you know. So it was also, it was intergenerational. So there were grandparents, parents, children, all participating, and it was so wonderful. So I came home, found funding, and invited 3 artists from Canada, and I invited 4 artists from Australia. And I'll introduce all of these folks to you. Well, I'll do it now. On the left is Carrie Clark, and then next to her is Marie Clark, and then Molly Mahoney, Mitch Mahoney standing. And Molly and Mitch are Carrie's children, and Wade, who's the second from your right. So back to Merrill standing, myself, and sitting is, of course, sitting Adrian and Barry, and Vicki West on the other end of Wade. So we all got together, and it was a 3-week period. And in that 3 weeks, we introduced ourselves and told stories about where we came from, what our work was about, and just really got to know each other, you know. So this was in the first day we showed each other our work. And then we started laying out. We had a buffalo skin, and we had possum skins that were brought while they were purchased in New Zealand because of the revival of this practice of possum skin cloaks. It had been lost for many years, but the revival created a scarcity of possums, so they were then on the endangered species list. So then in New Zealand, they're overrun with them. So anyways, that's where we sourced them. So we had, in the first week, we were at City Hall in Ottawa, and then we were stitching the possum skins together. As you saw, the buffalo was skin was laid out. I'll try to move. I've got quite a few slides. It was just so much fun. And for us, it's really hard to not look at them all again because it was just such a wonderful time. So we did patterns. You'll get to see more of the designs, but each of us did our hand. This went on the buffalo robe. And so there you see we have made like a template and worked out our designs. So some of us for sewing. Adrian, master drawer, did a lot of the drawing on the actual robes, and Mitch was a master with that burning tool and etching in. So here we are. We've got the possum skins sewn together. Here's the buffalo robe, and that's actually a wood burning tool, and we etched in the designs. Sorry. So Barry will talk more about this, but he taught us beadwork, and a lot of his years of skills and understanding about the beads. And we each made a medallion. I'll jump to this one here. On the possum skins, we each had one possum skin that had our own pattern of choice. So here, for instance, is the Métis symbol with the Hudson's Bay blanket, which is about my heritage. this is what Marie chose to do. So we did, and also we made a medallion for each of us on the buffalo robe. Okay, and then we also put community and other symbols in. I'll try not to go too much into the actual what's on the robe. We can, well, okay, I see the flowers. So the flowers are a kangaroo paw flower and Anishinaabe healing flowers. So we put those on. So each of us made our own medallions, had our own possum skin panel. On the buffalo robe, we put contour maps of the land that we're from. You can see we had a lot of fun. It was just, we were set up for the second 2 weeks in Carleton University Art Gallery space, and we were able to spread out and work there. And we had people from the community around us coming in and looking on, and in some cases were able to work with us on the actual robe and cloak. So it was really intense. 3 weeks kind of sounds like a long time, but not really. We had big dreams, and of what we would like to be on the possum skin cloak and the buffalo robe. And we worked and pushed, and the other two artists that are here will tell you that it was very memorable, and we were very pleased with the outcome. This is Molly again. So I don't know. Oh, here are some of the, are these the parrot feathers? No.
No.
Actually, in the possum skin cloak, traditionally they use ochre for painting on the skins, but we sourced out some leather dye, so we were able to bring in new colors, more colors, and there's the land contour maps. So each of us had the geography and the physical space, but then also a symbol of what was important to us. Gee, I don't know how long. I don't know, Barry, Adrian, do you want to jump in at any point? I'm kind of running low here. There's a lot of images. I'm gonna go through and introduce each of the artists. I just thought I would let you see the actual hands-on of the project. After we were completing the project at the end of our 3 weeks, we then, each of us donned the robe and the cloak, and I did some portraits, and that's what is in the gallery surrounding them. So we each were wrapped in our cultures, our joint experiences. I guess I could maybe mention that the possum skin cloak was a practice that had disappeared and was only rediscovered in, I think, 5 or 6 different cloaks that were found in museums around the world. So Marie and 3 other women went and studied these, and then went back to their communities. And in the land surrounding Melbourne, the state, I guess, of Victoria, they went and broke up the 32 different Indigenous language groups. And between them, they went to all of those communities and taught them, told them about the cloaks and the practices. And so the idea was that when a child was born, they'd be given 2 or 3 possum skins that were sewn together, and that was their blanket. And then as they grew, they kept adding the skins to make it larger, and they embellished and told stories about that individual, things that were important to that individual. And at the end of their lives, they were buried in their cloak. And so we won't speculate on how those ones in the museum were acquired, but this practice was lost in the colonization history, and the women that brought this practice back, if you check online for the Commonwealth Games, and I forget the year, each of those different communities wore the possum skin cloaks out onto the stage of the opening of the games, and it was quite something. And to be able to share this, when I came back, I immediately, in wanting to bring Marie and Lenny and Julie and Vicki to Canada, I was trying to sort out, well, what could we from Canada bring to the gathering and share? And that's where it seemed obvious to me that a buffalo robe had some similar functions or creation ideas. And so I think Adrian will talk more about the buffalo robe. But I think earlier I showed, there was a picture of some people bending over with these different colored. So what the red and black and white and yellow bundles are offering bundles that have tobacco and cedar in them. And people who came to observe and participate, by the end of it, we were overwhelmed. It was difficult to accommodate their participation, and we wanted them to have a way of contributing and sharing this. So we put these on both the buffalo robe and the possum skin robe. This was a design that talked about the spiral is image that it appears about the continuity of life. And just ignore those black things on the bottom. That's where we stick the medallions on, but these shots had, there they are. So we were talking about the people coming together for this gathering. Also, there's animals, footprints on the bottoms, and yeah. They're in the buffalo robe. And these, excuse me, these are images of the originating exhibition in Ottawa, where the walls are different colored. But this is just to show you the actual buffalo robe. You can see our hands that we are working on, and then the land and symbols there that, okay. So the artists, I mentioned that Len and Marie were my inspiration. And so Marie is this incredible artist from, again, this is all around the Melbourne area. And she, her and Len worked a lot on different projects of reclaiming historical practices and objects. She's a photographer, a painter. I can't go on. I'll try to go on, but I can't go on enough about her skills and her talent. I mean, what was just so inspiring as a human being, and then seeing her work was incredible. So she would go collect all of these natural materials. And I apologize for, I won't be able to represent the people the way that they could if they were here talking, but so she did all these portraits and dressed people in their in these traditional objects. Her and Len had again seen this kangaroo necklace in a museum, and they set out to create their own. And so there's a lot of roadkill of kangaroos in Australia, and they went out and collected these teeth, and they only were able to get a few teeth from each kangaroo. So there's a lot of kangaroos represented here, but they're just incredible. Again, the experience. I will say, on the front there, the triangles pattern, unfortunately, Lenny passed away before he could come. So it wasn't long before we were scheduled to get together that he passed away. And he was Marie's life partner. And he, again, he was really incredible. Very, his knowledge of his culture and his willingness and openness to share that, to teach that within his community and the broader community. It was just so, so moving. So Marie wanted to represent him in the cloak, and she did the diamond shapes are referencing his community, the Gunai community. And I believe the one above it is actually Molly's. And so Len was like Molly's uncle. Oh, I think I forgot to mention that Carrie and Wade and Molly and Mitch, Marie was their aunt. And again, it's I invited 4 people and 6 people came because the whole family wanted to come. But Marie involves family and people around her in her projects. And so they were no strangers to working on the cloak at all. So I was saying Molly had the bluebird, I believe, was a tribute to Len as well. Oh, here's a better shot of that. Let's see. And I put these as hands. Oh, the diamonds are up in the top left corner for Marie's representation. And again, the diamond pattern on the left of Marie's medallion. I believe the one next I'll just mention is Wade's. It's got a crow. It's a little difficult to see. And then the next one is Merrill's tree that is about her community. And then Barry, and he'll talk more about his own work. So Merrill Mcmaster is based here in Ottawa. Her family comes from the Saskatchewan, the prairies, and she works in photography. And when I invited her to be a part of the project, she was concerned that she didn't know how to make a cloak or robe. And I assured her that very few of us did know how to, but she, in her art practice, creates intricate material objects. So she makes all of these things and then photographs herself, does self-portraits. And yeah, she was a pleasure to have involved with us, but also contributed so much as well. So it was like myself, I generally work alone. I think I mentioned that, but for us to, and we know each other and each other's work, but to actually get to spend time together and work together was really a treasured time, you know, so, oh yeah, and then this is Merrill's as well, I think, yes. And yeah, I mentioned her tree of life. Yeah. Oh, maybe I got it wrong. Merrill's was the bird, the pheasant there, the little bird. Okay, Vicki West. She's from Twalwulaway, and I apologize. What we know as Tasmania, but they've changed the name to a traditional name. She is an incredible artist herself, and she works a lot in textiles. So this is a dress made of kelp, a wedding dress. And so she collected, she lives, you know, by the ocean, and she collects a lot of natural materials as well. I forget the material source here, but again, and the exhibition, after it leaves the zoo, is going to Tasmania to be exhibited there. And we're really excited and also wish we could go and see it there. This is I think the spearmint leaf that had special meaning to her and her community. And you can see it, here, I forgot I can do that. And parrot feathers, we can get back to those. But, okay, so while I'm here, this is Adrian's, and he will talk about that. This is mine, and I believe this, we have Wade's, Molly's, and Carrie's. And I must admit, I was running around a lot playing coordinator, so I didn't do all my beadwork, but I tried. No, beadwork is very challenging. I did my best, but I know I had a lot of help from a lot of people. So, but again, in the hands. So, Adrian, I'll let Adrian introduce himself. Your friend, Adrian.
You bet.
Go for it, Adrian.
You
just let me know when you'd like me to advance through the slides if you remember what they are. Yeah.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Rosalie. So lovely to see everyone in 2D. Warms my heart to see those images again. Such a lovely time we had in Ottawa and creating these robes, and so lovely to be able to revisit it. And thank you to the Art Gallery of Algoma for hosting this, my hometown. So very excited that it's in Sault Ste. Marie. So for me, Rosalie had contacted me in particular to consult about a bison robe and the use of a bison robe as part of this project, and also invited me as an artist to be a part of it, for which I was very grateful. So I think for people who are not aware, the bison robe in particular for Plains tribes is a material culture that is often used to communicate stories. I can speak from a Blackfoot perspective, and also understanding that each tribal group has their own sort of approach to these kinds of art making processes and the use of robes and stuff. For instance, much of the bison robes themselves are very sort of utilitarian, you know, in the use of building teepees, clothes, the whole bison itself used for food, tools, and also a very big part of our spiritual life. For the Blackfoot, it sort of falls into two categories, that often bison robes are utilitarian, used within the camp. But then there are robes that are special and become sacred through the process of putting stories on them. So when Rosalie approached, I did a bit of background to see the appropriateness and such of doing this project, because the practice itself is not often practiced anymore, although lately I've been finding a lot of younger artists have been going back to the use of bison robes. I also have to say that Indigenous cultures around the Americas, the use of animal skins and stuff to convey stories is quite common. So it is something that's very, very well practiced in many Indigenous cultures around Turtle Island. So with the Blackfoot, we have a few types of ways that the robes were used for. In particular, winter counts. Winter counts were just basically a count of a particular year through petroglyphs and such, telling stories through single symbols and such that spoke to current or to events, but also did a count of maybe numbers of people and animals and stuff and events of that year. Another use are warrior accounts and warrior robes that often warriors would account their battles and such, and those would be put onto robes and worn around the encampment. The robes themselves would either be done by the warrior, or the warrior would ask an artist in the tribe to help him do that. And also story robes. I think it goes along with winter counts and stuff. It's just basically stories that were put onto the robes. And many of these robes you can find in the museum, is it now called Natural History in Ottawa? And so a number of those robes are there, and around the world, actually, very similar to the possum skins. These were acquired in many cases dubiously, and ended up in various collections around the world. But it is a practice that is being revived since Wrapping in Culture. I've done another bison robe for the University of Calgary in telling alternative stories of the Calgary Stampede, stories that were not often told. So again, that process and the wonderful process we undertook as artists with this was to not only look at historical petroglyphs and such and stuff, but to invent new ones that represent ourselves, which in many cases is a central tenet in a lot of story robes, that the authors and stuff are portrayed somehow within the works. So that's sort of a bit of a background of the use of bison robes. But in particular, with these particular robes and our process of the fact that as artists and people coming together, that we would all be representative and represent our communities. So in particular, you will see the outlines of our territories. For me, I put down the Blackfoot or the Siksika Nation boundaries and such, and then the different sort of tribes and spiritual societies in. So these robes, in effect, communicate a great deal to the people who are viewing them. And one of the most wonderful moments in the workshop that I found after we had completed painting and the beadwork that Barry primarily did, because I know he did mine as well, and was that, when you don these robes, and if you could imagine in time that if everyone wearing their robes in the encampment, they would be walking around, and it would be like a walking encyclopedia, an animated story of all these things, and the richness and the beauty of that is something that I found quite profound during this process. And I do have to say thank you, Rosalie, for inviting me into this, because it really rekindled some really beautiful sort of historical and sort of all that stuff that's trapped in our DNA. And I just sort of thought to myself, what a wonderful opportunity to not only communicate as artists an event here and now, but that this robe, like the robes of the past, would go on into the future and tell stories for people to decipher, to think about, and perhaps write PhDs about. So I think that for me, being invited and to speak to the use of the bison robe, not only in Blackfoot culture but in many cultures, it was a great honor. And also the transfer of knowledge in relation to the possum skins was incredible too. I have actually spent a lot of time in Australia the last few years, and through this workshop really expanded my understanding of the possum skins itself and the materiality that they use. And these things that happen when you work cross-culturally, because now I'm using those burning tools on bison robes now, and I really love that, And so I think when you think about sort of the furtherance and the evolution of knowledge, that it's these moments that really sort of speak to that. So perhaps I will maybe hand it over to Barry now.
Cool. Thank you. Well, actually, I'm just going to jump in and go through the Mahoney family first, and then I'm saving Barry for last. So I mentioned that Carrie is Marie's niece, and I won't try and pronounce her community name, but she was very, she has done many projects with her aunt, and especially material sewing and creating like the possum skin, but other things. This is her biggest creation. No, this is her family. So the family together. It's really about the community. Like it did feel like a big family, a big extended family, spending time with her. And let's see, I think I have. Yeah. Oh, yes, that is her medallion on the bottom left there, the flowers. And yeah, she really got into the beading. I think she was one of your best pupils, Barry. But
and Molly.
Yeah, her and Molly together. Yeah. So again, these are symbols that are very special to them. And I do look forward to a graduate thesis that does go into what they all mean, because again, we are so busy being there and making, that learning more and learning from each other. But 3 years later, trying to pull in those memories and again, I'm not doing them justice. Wade, he works with community services within the Aboriginal community in I think they're based outside of Sydney, he is. But again, he was totally into this sharing of ideas and community and working with, Auntie Marie, He really liked the raven and used it for all of his symbols, It had special meaning to him and his community in particular. And so you see the repeating motif that each of us, brought into our work. And Mitch was one of the first artists I was bringing along with Marie. The older son, and he really has worked a lot with communities. He brought a possum skin cloak that he had made as part of his graduating year. They had to make project, and he brought one that was just incredibly, the patterns and the stories. And we did some outreach with the University of Ottawa and went and did a talk there, and just him interacting with the students and telling us all about his culture. It was really, and I think for Mitch, when he was young, Auntie Marie showed up for his birthday and brought 3 possum skins. And so she started him out on his journey as an artist, and he's run with it. He's off and running. So this was some of the work the story poles that he had done in his community. Oh, and he also did this kangaroo robe work, So yeah, he's really playing with materials and materials that have cultural significance to him. He was a master with the burning tool. He taught us a lot about that. It was great. And yeah. And that's his hand, of course, with all of the detail. He was very good with doing details and it echoing, again, the cultural practices from his community. His younger sister, Molly, was still in school, and I know for her, her graduating year was upcoming, and so she had, they'd already collected skins for her cloak that she was going to make. And funny story, I ordered the possum skins from New Zealand 2 months ahead of time, and a week before everyone was getting together, they still hadn't arrived. So because Carrie had been collecting skins for Molly's graduation project, she was able to bring them. So they brought them on the plane, and then I repaid them with the skins that finally showed up. But that's an aside. Molly did this incredible tutu feather overlay. So, or emu feather tutu overlay. So yeah, her and her mother really loved these material projects. So she was quite talented and brought a lot of that youthful energy that that really made a difference for us. And I can't see, oh, hers is the blue beadwork and connecting to the sea. I hope that was hers. Yes, here's her blue bird. So, yeah. So now we'll go to Barry. So Barry, let me know when you want the slides changed.
All
yeah.
right.
Barry.
Thanks, Rosalie. Yeah, this was a very exciting and important project for me. I come from a line of makers. So, and you know, I don't necessarily consider myself or call myself an artist. I basically learned to make things with my hands. So I talk about myself as a maker. My home community is Shigeen on Manitoulin Island, which is not far from Sault Ste. Marie. And I was actually one of my most important mentors in learning to be a maker was my great aunt, Annie McGregor, who was from Sagamok. And you can change the slide, Rosalind. So I grew up and learned quite a bit of our material culture from women, primarily from my great aunt. So I learned to gather the splint ash material, weave the baskets, learned about the motifs, and also learned about beadwork. A lot of this was part of our economy, especially in Manitoulin. And up as far up as Sault Ste. Marie, this was an important economy for the tourists that would come up from the United States. So we'd make baskets and sell them to the various stores, and the tourists would come and buy them. So I got to spend a lot of time with my great aunt, who was a fluent speaker, also carried with her a lot of knowledge about materials. So I learned about materials, materiality, I learned about medicines, and I learned about stories, and I learned about the importance of symbology, you know, symbols, because each of those symbols that you see represented in those robes that we completed are a visual language, they're a narrative. They talk about myth and legend, they talk about things that will happen to us in our lives. So they're very, very, very important in terms of our knowledge. And it was interesting with this project because a lot of it was a universal language. So the artists from Australia also carried that visual language. So each one brought with them something that was quite unique, and we shared. You can go to the next slide. So my great aunt taught as well. She would teach splint ash baskets. These were taken actually at OCF, Ojibwa Culture Foundation in Shigeen. I found them in the archives when I was up there doing an exhibition a few years ago. And again, that knowledge of passing on was so important, and it still is important. And that's why this project was exciting, was the fact that we were sharing traditional knowledge and cultural practices. And we learned how to do things, but did it in a way that was very community-based. In other words, while we were making these objects, we were sharing stories, we were talking about our communities, talking about our people, talking about our language. So that was what has always been done. So there's a cultural continuity, I think, that runs through the work that we did that goes right far back into the past. So that was another important aspect of the project. Change the slide, Rosalie, next one. So, you know, as I said, I grew up as a maker. Also, I participated in powwow. It's okay, leave it there.
Okay.
So, of course, a lot of the regalia you can have made for you, but I made all my own regalia. So I did all the beading, I did all the cutting of the material, etc. So again, that was what I felt that I was bringing to the project, was bringing this ability to take materials and rework them, and bring in a distinct cultural aesthetic which I think was apparent that everyone brought to it, was we brought our own cultural representation and brought it into an object that was really very universal. You can go to the next one. And this practice also next one, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, went backwards there.
So in 2010, a lot of my cultural practices end up being integrated into my contemporary art practice. So in 2010, I had the opportunity to go and participate in Robert Houle's Paris Ojibwa. And so these were performances that were done based on a dance troupe in 1845 that danced for George Catlin in Paris. And so I did 4 site-specific performance pieces in Paris, dressed in regalia, very much like the dancers did in the 1840s, many of whom succumbed to smallpox. So this was kind of like, it was integrating performance plus ceremony in a way, because I was doing a reparative act where I was going back and doing these performances and bringing back this, the spirit of those dancers through the performances that I was doing. So my work really is kind of, I'm very, very interested in this confluence between the historical and the contemporary. So it's looking back and taking it out of that cultural stasis by which we've been placed and bringing that forward into a contemporary context. And I think these robes and the cloak and the robe that we did, they're sacred to us in the sense of being made by us as makers, but they are not sacred in that sense that they are holy items. You know, we have respect around them, but these are to be looked at in a contemporary context because they incorporate contemporary materials. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And Rosalie touched on it. I was really interested in when Marie was talking about these particular robes. This is a depiction of an early robe that was a robe ceremony that was done by William Barrick, who was an Indigenous artist. And you can see them wearing these cloaks. So Marie went back and she looked back into these historical documents and found evidence of, for example, William Barrick's witnessing of these ceremonies. So you can imagine these cloaks being worn, and you could either have them with your information, your mnemonic code internally against you, or you could have the fur on the outside, which replicated specific patterns as well. So I became very interested in that as well. So what Marie's work and talk about what she had done with her search and quest for knowledge, I thought, well, Anishinaabe of our area, Manitoulin, Sault Ste. Marie, et cetera, must have had robes as well. So if we go to the next slide, I came across a drawing. It was attributed to Sir Joshua Jebb, but that's not actually the artist, but it's 2 Odawa chiefs. And this is done at Sault Ste. Marie. And the one individual is wearing an elk robe. It's an elk skin robe with painted motifs on it. And so I ended up now, like Adrian, I have an elk robe now. So I'm starting to work on that particular robe to make a contemporary piece, not a historical piece. I'm not replicating something. I'm bringing it into a contemporary context, because my work is not about making something that's a replication of the past, but it's something to make relevant for the future. So maybe we can go to the next one, Rosalie. So I work with electronic components, primarily capacitors, which are the bright colored objects that you see on the screen, and beads. And Anishinaabe Mowin, a glass bead, a manido manense, is a spirit or an energy, manido being spirit. So each one of those beads is imbued with an energy. It's a spirit. Ironically, within electronic circuitry, a capacitor, which forms the flowers that you see, also store energy and release it when it's needed. So going back to dancing, for example, when you're dancing floral motifs, you're dancing for collective and individual healing. So you're dancing those medicine flowers, and they're releasing energy. So very much like in a circuit, a capacitor releases its energy. So there's a beautiful simile between the glass bead and the capacitor. So what I've done then is it's a confluence between historical and contemporary, bringing that historical practice forward and integrating new media, new technology into it, but still maintaining a distinct Anishinaabeg aesthetic. And you can see the detail on the other side. That's from a frontal a front panel from a bandolier bag. I do large bandolier bags. You can see one at Ojibwa Culture Foundation in Shigeen. And I embed digital tablets into them. And because in the language, the bandolier bag is animate, I incorporate motion detectors. So when you walk up to them, they actually come alive. So your presence activates them and they communicate with you. They screen whatever is in there. So that again is looking at that. That's the meaning behind the work that I do, and that's what I wanted to bring to the project. I wanted to bring something a little bit more, a little bit integrating more contemporary. Go to the next one, Rosalie. There you can see a juxtaposition between the historical bandolier bag and a contemporary bag with a digital tablet that I have made. Go to the next one. I was also I'm very interested in material culture. So this was a perfect segue for me to further explore within my own practice. These are trail dusters, which I call them Nagik Mokzinan, otter moccasins. I found a depiction of otter moccasins in Carl Bodmer's etchings, aquatints that he did when he traveled up the Missouri in the 1830s. And they were ceremonial. And I really like this idea of something that would be dragging behind you to erase your tracks. So these ones incorporate the contemporary capacitor and beadwork floral motifs, incorporate Nagik or otter material, that's synthetic porcupine hair. So it's plastic, but it integrates that contemporary material. And then I took I was gifted a pair of Fluvogs from Michael Belmore, and so I integrated Michael's shoes into this particular piece. So it becomes a contemporary work that references a historical past. Go to the next slide, Rosa. And there they are, animated. So I basically had them, so they're actually floating, and they appeared to be moving in an animate way, because Anishinaabe language, Anishinaabe Mowin, incorporates a lot of animation within it and a lot of symbols of power. So I wanted to bring that to the work as well. Next one. I also completed a complete set of regalia, men's and women's dance regalia. So it's beaded work, floral work on black velvet, and then the yokes and the cuffs and the otter pouch, the leggings on the women's jingle dress and her headband are all with those electronic components. So here I'm integrating that material, contemporary and historical materials into a complete set of dance regalia. Next. So I wanted to bring that into the project as well. So on the buffalo robe, I did 2 medallions, and instead of using beadwork, which we did on the possum, I thought it would be interesting to bring in that contemporary aspect onto the buffalo robe and use the electronic components, the circuits. The one on the right-hand side, with the yellow morning star in the center of it, that particular capacitor is called is made by the Phillips Corporation, and it's called a tropical fish. And it's actually the component that's used in a wah-wah pedal for a guitar. So that makes the wah-wah sound. So I thought it was kind of interesting to bring some of these elements into it, this aspect of music and contemporary music, and bringing those components into the work as well. We'll go to the next one. So there I am with the robe. I'm not sure if what the next one was, Rosalie, if there was. if there was anything with the, oh yeah. So again, I incorporate a lot of the symbols that I put in, the grandfather's teachings. I put in the medicine flowers. I also incorporate the Mijibiju. All of these symbols, like I said before, are linked to specific mythologies and understanding of life ways and understanding the world in which we live. It's not depicted there, but you may have seen it on one of the other photographs. It was the water panther. It's called the Mijibiju, and that particular water spirit controls the waves, and it has little zigzags on its back. You can actually go up the Agua Canyon very close to Sault Ste. Marie, and you can actually see one of them painted onto the rock face there. And that talked about, that's mnemonic code telling us about how we need to protect the water. And if you don't respect the water, then something will happen to you. The waves will get rough. The water will not respect you. So each of these symbols that we were incorporating carries with it a specific knowledge. It's a code, it's a semiotic. So that's the other thing that's really beautiful about these story robes and these materials that we incorporated is, yes, you know, you're talking about a PhD dissertation. Yes, there is, because it's a multiplicity of international language, signs and symbols that are incorporated into each piece. I think there was one more. Is that it? Oh yeah. And so I used the Thunderbird, the Benesse, which is our symbol for Shigeen, for a community. So the one on the extreme left is my medallion. And it was great teaching everybody to bead. You know, it was especially for Molly and for Carrie. They really got into it. Molly is still beading. She actually beaded jean jackets for her graduating class, for her friends. And so she really took to it in a big way. And we talked about beads, you know, we talked about how they used specific seeds that they would gather, and they used for their use of beads. And I said, well, we did the same. We also had seeds and we used that. But then with we used porcupine quill, which I also incorporated. You can see on Adrian's buffalo there are a couple porcupine quills in there, because porcupine quill was the original bead for the Great Lakes area. We did primarily geometric patterns, but when the glass bead came in, women realized that you could do a lot of curvilinear work. So then you see a shift, and you can really see that in the bandolier bags, where you know, you see the geometric pattern, and then you start to see it shift more into a floral motif. Again, it's the integration of the technology that allows you to advance and do something different. But you still maintain a distinct aesthetic, and that's what I'm really interested in the work. So these robes are a strong continuity with the past. They draw from that historical information, and then they are represented back to you in a contemporary context. And I think that's one of the most important things is that it shows that our culture has always been moving. It's never been in a stasis, even though museums, anthropologists, ethnologists will put us within a historical context. We bring it forward, and we bring that traditional knowledge with it. My clan is otter, Nagik. So you can see on my handprint, you'll see the otter, courtesy of Adrian, who drew that for me, because I couldn't get away to do anything because I was beading all the time, and Adrian was a better drawer, so he did that fantastic otter for me. But again, that talks in there about lineage. It talks about family. It talks about our community, where we come from. So each of these symbols, again, carries with it that mnemonic knowledge. So I think that's it. So. Yeah, and there's the topographical map of Shigeen with the Benesse, the Thunderbird.
Cool. Well, thank you, Barry. That was great. I'll just quickly run through this part. I think I mentioned that I had put the Hudson's Bay and the Métis infinity symbol being from the prairies. And I love that the buffalo are running across the top here, because the buffalo were important to the Métis as well. So that was really cool. And the flower beadwork, I think, was really important to the Métis people as well, that got into the beading and that. And I have a little, I think, a piece of possum on the bottom for my little pom-pom there. This one I have a hard time seeing, but this is actually the Red River and the Assiniboine, which was, showing Winnipeg, and then the beaver, because of the beaver trade and the Métis people. And again, there's my Métis symbol. So this again is the group, and I can't stress enough how much fun we had. We wore ourselves out running around. As hostess, we took the Australians had fun going to the Museum of History. We went out to what's the name of the community? The community. Thank you. Kittakinzibi here, yeah. So actually, it was Remembrance Day that we went to Kittakinzibi for a ceremony there, and just toured around and just had so much fun. And I hope that comes through in the robe and cloak. Are sitting there, certainly in the photographs around and the accompanying video in the exhibition. These two, I don't know, trouble.
that was in Kahnawake.
Yeah, Kahnawake, yeah. So yeah, we loaded everyone in vans and we went off to Montreal. We went to Kahnawake here, and Wasentio, our curator at the Ottawa Art Gallery, toured us around her home community. And coincidentally in Montreal, Adrian had an exhibition. So that was a lot of fun. Here's where we bought our leather paint and some of our supplies, our beads. And the Australians all stayed together in, and again, on tour. The Australians loved the snow, although they have snow in some parts of Australia, some parts they don't. And so the snow and squirrels, they love the black squirrels. They hadn't really, they were quite taken with them and kept feeding them in their backyard. And I thought, wow, when they leave, that place is going to be just overrun with squirrels. But they had.
Or there'll be a nice cloak, Rosalie.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that.
Very.
I love a new. Yeah, new practice right there.
So here we all are. So I'm not sure what else we'd like to talk about other than if we had questions, or if Barry or Adrian have anything else to say. It looks like
Rosalie, maybe Adrian
the light went out here, so I'm going to open the curtain here.
Adrian, maybe you can tell that. Maybe you can tell that story about the robe that we were supposed to look at the Canadian Museum of History that they told you about, that had a interesting motif on it. Do you remember that story?
No, I think you're better at telling that. You seem to recall.
Yeah, remember it was like a Buffalo Bill Wild West story about one of the robes.
Barry, I think it's your story.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Yeah, there was somebody that was telling us that they told you when you were inquiring about the robes to go and look at a specific robe, and there was a kangaroo on it. And
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, was a teepee design.
Oh, it was a teepee.
Yeah, teepee design, and it actually belonged to the bear robe family. What it was interesting, as I was doing research at one point, I was looking through images, and all of a sudden this image came up of a Blackfoot teepee, and on it was a kangaroo. And I was like, what's a kangaroo doing on a Blackfoot teepee? But that goes back to a story back in the about 1910, when a group of Blackfoot rodeo guys sailed across to Australia to show rodeo skills and such to folks in Australia. And I think they did take part in I think there was some sort of centennial or some sort of big event going on. But it was from that trip that when they came back, the owner of the teepee, the bear robe teepee, he actually included Australia and also the outline of Australia on the teepee, which actually is a really great example of how the influence and of other cultures and stuff trickle into our own stories. But then again, when you think about it, it becomes this continuum up until now when this robe was done. So you often wonder about the wonderful sort of spiritual nature of what we do, and the connections, and in particular, the very strong connections over the years between Indigenous artists from both Canada and Australia. There's been a lot of meetings over the years and a lot of waves of people coming back and forth. So the influence upon each other is pretty great. And so that was actually, yeah, that was a really lovely and sort of funny story, because it was like that moment of like, what?
We thought we were doing it first.
The first exchange.
And also, when you think about it, we think that things didn't happen before the internet, before the globalization, before all of that. However, this story proves that things did happen. So it is just a continuation of the exchange, and which kind of brings us to the next question. Is this project, I think Barry mentioned something about it, but I was just wondering if this project influenced your own practices in some ways, so that you are continuing with projects that somehow are living from that. Just
who's first?
Guys.
I'll jump in. Yeah, for sure. You know, I have to say that, you know, it was a really wonderful reintroduction to a cultural practice of mine in the Blackfoot. And as I mentioned earlier, I actually did another robe, a story robe for the University of Calgary that's going to be going on display at the Glenbow Museum at some point soon. But I actually, you know, a part of my practice, of course, is with the bison and the history and acting like one through Buffalo Boy and you name it. But definitely, I still want to do more robes. I want to become, I guess one of the things is sometimes these projects come along, and so there's that urgency to it. What I'd really like to do is take the time, and in particular with my own familial history, is go back and sort of think of all the accounts and all the moments, and then translate that into a story robe at some point, and make that a sort of a part of my family's historical documentation. So yes, it's still very much a part of it. And I think for me anyway, the bison will always be a big part of my practice.
Yes, that's for sure.
And it was the same for me. I did the, I'm working now on the elk robe. So again, that collaborative work and the research that Marie shared with us, you know, inspired me to do that. But it also went beyond that too, because I started to take a deeper interest in a lot of the cultural arts, and then bringing in a contemporary component to it. So I worked on a residency in Chagrin with David Miwans, who is a potter, and he studied under Carl Beam. And so I worked for a summer with David, creating pots, and so the clay comes right from the community, from the land. And I started integrating electronic components into the clay. So the pots actually have electronic component floral motif. And now I'm working with birch bark, doing birch bark containers, and instead of using quill work on it, well, I'm quilling with telephone wire, and I'm incorporating electronic component floral work on that. So it's allowed me to look back at the great variety of cultural arts that we have within the community, and how that can be brought into a contemporary context by incorporating new materials into it.
And I know, Rosalie, your work always related to your family history and your roots. So
yeah, I'm thinking of beaver skins. No.
I know that you think about Hudson Bay a lot.
Yeah. Well, for me, the most significant part was the sharing of our time together and our practices, You know, although it was a little overwhelming for me at times organizing this, I would definitely look to having expanding my practice to work with others. I think I work well with others, you know, and that's probably the direction that I can see this project impacting on me the most.
Well, that sounds great. I think we have a question.
I was going to say, I don't think I'll be beading anytime soon, but yeah. Yeah. Sorry, question.
Kai, do you have a question there?
No, it's not a question. It's more of a comment. We have one of the participants just wanted to note that she's a BFA student at Algoma, and she didn't have a question, but she wanted to say that it was a pleasure seeing the works in person at the art gallery last week, and the talk was a wonderful way to get a picture of everything that went into these spectacular cloaks, and she wanted to thank everyone so much for sharing that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much, Hillary.
That comes from Hillary Evans, I should clarify, sorry.
Thank you, Hillary. That's great. I'm really glad you got in to see it. But I must say that the work that Kai and Jasmina and the group there have done as far as documenting and having video tours has been really incredible. And we really appreciate that because, you know, we've all had to adapt, and that's part of the strength of, you know.
We are all expanding our horizons and moving our culture into the future.
We can adapt.
You think with the project. So it has been really a great pleasure to have the exhibition, very positive feedback. Very sorry that we cannot do it in the traditional way. However, it did force us to kind of explore other options, and thank you for helping us. Especially you, Rosalie, you worked very hard with us to develop that whole virtual school tour, and we had, I think, at least 500 students so far seeing the exhibition virtually. So thank you, Kai, for being there with them.
Yeah, that was great. It's great.
So, and it's still available, pre-recorded tours, because the exhibition is closing on Saturday. So Sarah and I will condition report and pack and get it ready to go to Tasmania.
Yes.
And meanwhile, these pre-recorded virtual tours will be still available to teachers in both school boards here in the Sioux, so that's great. So we might still get some inquiries about that, and we might still share with more students, because it did feel very, and everything was done, again, the same as your project. One of you mentioned that the spirit continues to live. Well, everything was done in that hurry here as well, because the exhibition was delayed with the opening. It was shorter than anticipated in terms of the run. And realizing that we are not going to reach everybody the way we normally would, what can we do? How can we make it still accessible? How can we still get into the community? So thank you for doing this talk as part of that, because the talk is also recorded. So it will be available later. So I think it was very informative for all of us to hear more how the project came about. And I truly appreciate your time and cooperation, all three of you, for everything that you have done to make our short run and short project as successful, I guess, as it could be considering the circumstances.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I do want to add that there are a couple more comments, not any questions from any of the participants or attendees at this point, but Kathy Surratt wanted to let you guys know that the work was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the invitation to do this talk, and that she wanted to say thank you so much for that. Leah Snyder also.
Sorry for interruption, Kai. I just want to say Kathy Surratt is the Executive Director of the Indigenous Friendship Center in Sault. We collaborate with them through Culture Days now for years, and Kathy herself and also some of her staff and people from the community are beautiful makers, as Barry says, because they do very beautiful work, beading and applique and all sorts of things. So
Cool.
So she wanted to say thank you about everything. Leah Snyder also wanted to say she loves seeing all the images and bringing back memories of the 3 weeks being around everyone. Thanks, Rosalie, Barry, and Adrian. And Karen Dulesky wanted to say thank you so much to the artists, Jasmina, and staff. I was very happy to experience all your talents and efforts and art.
Very
Well,
nice.
thank you all.
Thank you.
and Susan, I think I saw Susan's name there too. There was something from Susan. Didn't I see something from Susan here as well?
Yeah, here she is. She commented as well. She wanted to say a huge thanks to Jasmina and the AGA staff, as thoroughly enjoyed the talk and webinar. Susan Myers and Penny Hunter, they're members of the AGA, and they were excited that they had the opportunity to see the exhibition in person.
That's great.
Hey.
Wow.
Well, I think that if anybody wants to say any final words, please feel free to do so. I'm so pleased that we actually were able to do it. I wasn't even sure when the pandemic happened if the exhibition is going to come. It was scheduled to open earlier and it was a different plan for everything, but I wasn't even sure if that's going to be possible. Everything is changing, as all of you know, daily. So we adjust. And I'm so pleased that we were able to do this. So thank you to all three of you and all the other artists who are not with us today, and everyone who made it possible, and the Ottawa Art Gallery.